You can have it. I'll just take a munch, okay? I'll take a munch from. G'day guys, and welcome to something a little bit different for this channel. Not a normal segment on this channel, may become one, don't know. But I've had a couple of questions from y'all about how I homeschool our toddler. She's 2 at the moment, turning 3, and I've been very heavy into educating her. And so I want to talk to you a bit about what that looks like, how we do that in daily life and as a family and all that good stuff. I have a bunch of our favorite resources to share with you, to talk about, and I want to say a couple of things before we get into it. The first thing that I want to say is that you don't need a bunch of resources. Most of these things that we're using are things that were gifted to us. They were given to us by other people, or they are, things we found in op shops because, it has a pen mark in it, so someone just donated it. You can find so much in op shops or places like Kmart, which are very affordable, so you don't need a bunch of money or a bunch of fancy stuff or a designated room or anything like that. The other, and perhaps the most important thing that I want to clarify here, is that homeschooling or home educating or just having your kid at home is not for everyone. There are some people who I think should not do this. If you have a lot of mental health issues yourself, if you're very prone to stress, if you're very easily, for lack of a better word, triggered into anger. I'm not saying that you can't homeschool. I'm just saying get help first. Go see a counselor. And in saying that, even for everyone else, those of us out there who feel, pretty capable and competent most of the time, homeschooling is not always going to be perfect. Having your kid in the house with you is not always going to be perfect. There are going to be tough days, and there are going to be some days where you just should not. We're having one of those days today. We've had a week full of really fun activities, and my daughter's just coming down from that high. So she's still in that place where she really wants to be doing, she really wants to be out there, she really wants to be, doing the things that she wants to do. And that's leading to, disobedience, of course. But there are some days where you have to pick your battles. And if that means that you just give up on educating your child for one day because you are not in the right mental place, or your child is not in the right mental place, that is completely acceptable, because you are the one setting the timeline. There's no one marking you at the end of the day. There's no one saying you needed to complete math, science, and English by 3 p.m. So give yourself a lot of grace in that, especially when the kids are really little, because they're learning and you are also learning if it's the first time that you're doing it. So if there's one thing that you take away from this video, I want it to be that you need to give yourself grace, and you don't always have to be educating your child It's okay to take days off. And if there are days where you're getting angry, you're getting overwhelmed, your kid is not doing what you want them to do, and it is just, you're snapping at your kid, you're yelling at your kid, you're just trying to force it down their throats and it's not working, just stop. Go make a cup of tea, read some stories instead. Every day does not have to be perfectly productive and educational, because there's a lot in life. There are a lot of ways to learn. We don't always have to be looking at books. We don't always have to be looking at screens. We don't always have to be reciting. We can learn a lot from outside. We can learn a lot from running around. And it is just as important to be building our physical health as it is to be building our mental wisdom and all that sort of thing. So, in saying those things, let's jump in. I'm going to show you what we use and talk to you a bit about how things look for us. The sun changes the flavor of the strawberry. Are you going to eat it? Now, the first thing I actually want to talk to you about is this book. It is called Home Education by Charlotte Mason, and this is actually the first book in a series of, I think, 12 books. I am not even halfway through this book, but it has helped so much to build my understanding of how to allow children to be children, what a child's day should look like. And this is talking about young children. And I strongly recommend this because I'm actually a second generation homeschool mum. But my mother's version of homeschooling looks very different to my version of homeschooling. So my mother's take on homeschooling was very, very rigid. Having a schoolroom, having desks, your work happens at your desk. There's set times for everything during the day. You work 9 till 3. No wiggle room, no, spontaneous days off or anything like that. Whereas I wanted it to be a bit more free and flexible, I guess. And I knew that I really wanted to incorporate more play, more outside time, a bit more of a sense of freedom, and also physical health, physical strength, because my brother and I did not really get any of that. We didn't learn to use our bodies. We were not the kind of kids who would go outside and run or scream or anything like that. At a stretch, we might climb a tree or ride our push bike, but none of that actual free physical activity, which is what builds young bodies. And Charlotte Mason really speaks into this. So I don't know anything about Charlotte Mason curriculums or Ambleside Online or those kinds of things. You're free to look them up. Go on it right ahead. But this book, even just the first quarter of this book, was so useful in shaping my expectations and giving me ideas about outdoor life. And this has changed myself a lot, as well as my daughter, because we do spend so much time outside when we can. It is raining today, which is 100% contributing to today not being an educational day for us, because if my daughter misses her outside time, she misses that freedom, that time to run and use the energy and explore, things aren't going to go great. So yeah, I absolutely recommend this book. I could spend ages waffling about what she says in here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to move on to some other resources. Hopefully, before I lose your attention, just want to sneak this one last bit in here. Alphabets. We found this for like $5, I think, at Kmart. And And I wish that we had not got this. I wish that we had got a lowercase version of this. And if you are a parent to young children, I would strongly, strongly encourage you, start with the lowercase alphabet. Because once your kids learn uppercase, they latch onto it, and lowercase is just a bit of an annoyance to learn. And also, if you look in a storybook or whatever, everything's written in lowercase. So I'm trying to teach my daughter lowercase now, and it is more of a struggle than it was to teach her uppercase letters. But I do really recommend these kinds of puzzle boards. These are wooden letters. You can tip them out, have your kid put them back, and just go through and sing the alphabet with them or tell them the alphabet. And that's a great way to introduce the alphabet. But as well as that, do lots of reading. We do tons of reading. I think we do a bit less reading now that my daughter has fallen in love with the outside world. But we read a lot. We have, you might be able to see it, the Beatrix Potter collection. We read usually at least one of those a day. That's usually our bedtime story. I have just a little collection, a little sample, if you will, of the kind of books that we use. And education at this stage of development, where she's only 2 years old, you really just want to be flexible and go with what your child shows interest in. So my child was showing a lot of interest in reading, in books. She absolutely loves them. So that was a great sign to start teaching her the alphabet, because when you're reading a book, you can always, spell out the words on the front, or as you're reading, follow with your finger what you're reading. And that in itself is a great starting point for reading, encouraging your child to read rather, and getting them to start identifying those letters. Now, what I have here are some little kids' Bibles, and I want to get a more mature Bible, because these are gifts from other people, and they summarize, the key Bible stories, but it's just a little rhyme for each story. It doesn't really encompass God's word much. It's a good starting point, but we need a bit more now, because we'll just sit down in one sitting and we'll read through this Bible. We've also got this one, which is a bit more of a story, but even at the age of 2, my daughter, she likes longer books. She likes more detail. She wants to hear more of the story. So these are great as a starting point, these little Bibles, if your kids, in the 1-year-old range, or even if you want a bedtime story or a story to read in the morning or during tea time, these ones are great. And that actually is where I started. We're a bit more flexible at the moment, but the starting point for me was morning tea time. During morning tea, I would take 2 books, actually 3 books. I'd make sure one of them was a Bible or something that covers God's word. One of them could be a fun story book. One of them would be the alphabet, something to help us learn letters. And one of them would cover numbers. And just having that combination, so one faith resource, one alphabet resource, one numbers resource, and one just fun story to keep her engaged. That's kind of loosely my structure for the sitting down and learning, and I still try to incorporate that. Although as she grows and becomes a bit more independent, you kind of have to, gauge the day. So this was also a gift. Alphabet, again, I wish this had been lowercase. It's all uppercase. If you can find lowercase, please get lowercase. But the uppercase ones are great, and my daughter knew her alphabet ages ago. I feel like she definitely knew it when she was 2.5 years old. And she really has a love for story time, which is great. And then for maths, I have 2 books. I have Spot Can Count. This is a great book because it's kind of interactive. how many squirrels are in the tree. And then you can count with your kid, 1, 2, and then you lift up the flap and it says 2, and all that kind of fun stuff. The other maths one I have is actually the Very Hungry Caterpillar, because on Monday he ate through one apple, and Tuesday 2 pears, etc., etc. And so what I actually do is, when you get to that page with the fruits on it, count the fruits. And it's just repetition. Teaching children these things is repetition, repeated modeling, because when they see you doing something, they want to do it too, and they remember what you're doing. It's the same with everything, but especially with education, it's a useful tool, because they see you counting and they want to copy you, they want to learn what you're doing. And then, as an example of some of the more fun books that we have, these were both, one of them was a gift and one of them we got for free. I cannot recommend these enough. This is I'm not sure if you can see it very well. This is the Usborne Peep Inside a Beehive book. They have a whole Peep Inside range. This is just the Beehive one, but there's Peep Inside a Bird's Nest, Peep Inside a Bug's Home, and all these kinds of things. And it is brilliant because it is an educational resource. It tells you what the bees are doing. It shows you inside the beehive. It shows you where honey goes and what you can make with it. It tells you how plants are pollinated. And we were out for a walk months ago now, and I'd been reading this on and off during our morning tea reading time or school time. And my daughter saw a bee on a flower and she said, "It's collecting pollen," or "He's sticking pollen to his leg." And that really, really sold me on these books, because it is a fun story. They want to see under the flaps, they want to hear the story, but they're learning so much as well. And this is just a simple little book, Who Said Woof? And this is actually really good, I've found, as a way of teaching the difference between a lie and the truth. So, woof, who said woof? Was it Bunny? And of course you're actually asking your child, was it Bunny? Did Bunny say woof? My daughter went through a phase of saying yes, because she knew the answer was no and she wanted to be cheeky. She wanted to, be testing the boundaries. And so that was valuable in teaching her, no, that was a lie. We don't tell lies. Does a rabbit say woof? No. Then why did you say yes? Yes, saying yes was not true, etc., etc. And you might be thinking, oh, they're too young to learn this. They're too little. They are never too little. If they're old enough to ask the question, if they're old enough to, commit the sin, they're old enough to be disciplined and reminded what the correct action is. And that can just look like having a conversation. And if it happens again, having that conversation again, especially when they're so little, because it's just explaining and it's just teaching. So that was a good resource. And also, because it's such a simple story, little kids can remember this. They have great memories. And my daughter, I have to rescue bread from the oven. Okay, the bread is safe. Where was I? Oh, my daughter memorized this book, and I found her sitting on the couch and she'd be reading to herself, Who said woof? Was it Bunny? No, Puppy. And she doesn't know the words, but the fact that she can memorize the story and look at the page is a huge step towards learning the words, because she knows what the words are meant to say. Now it's just connecting the dots. So even simple books have value. Something else that I've been using a lot are flashcards, and I just make these every so often. I have some with numbers on them. I made up these. They're just little bits of card with the alphabet on them, just because I don't have anything with the lowercase alphabet on it. And we'll just go through those. These can be used during the school time, tea time, education time as the alphabet resource as well, just holding them up and saying, what's that letter? What's that letter? And going on like that. Now, that was close. I also recommend the Beatrix Potter books and similar books. Beatrix Potter is just what we have because someone was kind enough to gift it to us. But these are so great. If your kid is little, it's a good way to build resilience and patience because they are slightly longer books. I try currently to stick to the ones that are about 56 to 60 pages long, just for my daughter's attention span, because once the story gets a bit longer than that, it's hard for them to keep track. But these are so good because it's all about animals, and you see the little pictures of the different animals, and while obviously your children know that animals aren't actually talking, it's fostering that interest in nature and in animals. And now I'm going to go into a tangent about what we do in schooling that is not connected to books, because Charlotte Mason is a huge believer of kids being outside, which I wholeheartedly agree with. She actually, I'm pretty sure, doesn't think that children should, sit down for classroom style lessons until they're 7 years old. And really that makes an awful lot of sense to me. I don't know about everyone else, but we learn so much from just being outside. And so a lot of our day, a lot of the morning, again, the weather in Australia is not really conducive to spending a huge amount of time outside in summer, but when we can, we spend a lot of our mornings outside, a lot of our afternoons outside, and just have that morning tea education time, and try to make the rest of it hands-on or outdoors. And so you might be thinking, well, how does your kid learn anything from just being outdoors? Well, you're there as well for some of it. So when your kid's really little, obviously you're not just going to chuck them in the backyard and say good luck. You're going to be there with them. And that's when you can point out the bees and say, look, that's a bumblebee. Ask them what color it is. Ask them what they think it's doing. The same with the birds, the same with the plants. And it's really just introducing your child to the world. And Ruth is turning 3 at the start of next year. And already for a few months now, she has been able to identify a lot of birds. And this is where my nature journal comes in. I don't have it with me, but I document the birds in our area, the bugs, the butterflies, etc. And I'll paint little pictures. And seeing me paint the birds that she's seen really has got her interested in the wildlife and knowing what it is. So if we see a bird, if it's a bird that we know, I'll ask her, what kind of bird is that? And 9 times out of 10, she will correctly answer me, because I've been saying, oh, look, it's a cockatoo, or oh, look, it's a kookaburra, or oh, look, it's a magpie. And just getting her to know the animals. And she actually has, we have quite a tame magpie who lives here. It's about the same age as Ruth, a little bit younger, I think. But it comes and it hangs out in our yard, and this magpie and Ruth are good friends. They will spend time in the yard together, and that's part of her motivator a lot of the time to go outside. I'll say, hey, Maggie's here, and she'll be out there talking to the magpie. But it's just really fostering that appreciation for creation, that love of nature, and that appreciation of beauty. And so, yeah, she can identify a bunch of plants, she can identify a bunch of birds, she can tell you what a dandelion is and where to find one. And that's just because we spend a lot of time in nature doing these things, looking at these things and learning about these things. Beyond that, when it comes to, being inside, I also try to involve her in as much cooking as possible. She stands up at the stove and helps to mix, and she's learned, you don't touch hot things, you don't put your hands in the pots, you only mix, and all those really basic things. And she'll help put things that are chopped up into the meals and so forth. And already she can tell you the ingredients that you need for different things. If we're making a shepherd's pie, she'll say that we need carrots, or we need peas, we need corn. If we're baking crunchy munchy honey cakes, she'll start with flour, and then she'll say we need some honey, or we need some oats, or we need some milk, and she'll ask for the ingredients that she wants to put in. And I also get her to help measuring. Now, she can't read the scales yet. We're not very good with numbers at the moment, but she can, practice physically scooping and dumping the ingredients in, which is really good as well. So there are a lot of things that we do that are not explicitly education. And as she grows, that's going to change a bit. Our next step will be learning more about reading. When it comes to learning days of the week, I just have a piece of paper on the fridge, and I've written Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on it. And we have a magnet, and we put the magnet next to which day it is. And she doesn't really get it, but it is teaching her the order of the days, and she's learning the list. And we don't watch movies all the time. We have movies on Friday and Saturday, sometimes Sunday. But it gets her excited for movie day because she's worked out Friday and Saturday mean a movie. So it's really helping her to start putting the world into perspective. So that's a bit of a peek into what our days look like. We've been quite off track the last few days, the last 2 weeks, I guess, just because there's been so much going on in our area, and we've not been home a lot. We've been out and about, but on a normal day where it's not raining, we would probably either spend a lot of time playing in the front yard, or we'd go for a walk. We're really blessed to live so close to a cattle station. If we just walk up the road, we'll find cows or horses, and that is brilliant. That's been such a blessing because she loves learning about the animals as well. And we'll look out for butterflies or weeds or just flowers or trees. There's a beehive as well, real close to our house, that we can go and visit. And just getting out in nature is such a big part. I would say the most important thing to do during this stage of life, as well as obviously one-on-one family time, making time to be at home. So we'll do our nature walks, our rambles, our time outside during morning tea time or somewhere throughout the day. We'll sit down and we'll have our story. We'll do something that involves maths, be it, counting cars or counting beads, or reading one of our vaguely math-related books where we get to count things in there. We'll do something to do with the alphabet, whether it's a puzzle or whether it's flashcards or whether it's an alphabet book, or even if it's just, what letter's that? What letter's that? What letter's that? Working out that letters go into words. Then we'll have our Bible time, and she actually listens to our grown-up Bible time because I get up. Ruth and I are up very early in the mornings. I rise with the sun, so in summer that means I'm up usually around 5 a.m. or earlier. So I'll get up and I'll have my Bible time. Sometimes I'll read out loud to her because she's up as well playing. And then after breakfast time, my husband reads his Bible, just a little snippet from the Bible and a passage from the commentary. And that's great, but she's too little to understand. So I am looking for a Bible resource, more Christian resources for kids of her age. I just haven't found one yet. And that's our official schooling for the day. And then it's just teaching her life, teaching her how to help, how to do things. We'll do colouring in, we'll do sewing practice, just using a bit of cardboard, punching a bunch of holes in it, threading a plastic needle and thread, and just letting her sew. She loves doing that. Colouring in. I've got some little baby scissors. She just sits and cuts up old cards and such. Just life. Just teaching her life, teaching her daily skills. And I really hope that we'll be able to continue on that path. I'm really enjoying it so far. We have not fully committed to whether we're homeschooling as parents or if she's going to school, but daycare was an absolute no-no. At the very least, until she's school age, she's not going to daycare or whatever. So that's where we're at the moment. I hope that this answered your questions, some of them at least. Please leave in the comments any questions that you do have. I'll try to link some of the books that I use, some of the books that Ruth likes. Let me know if you want to know more, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, and I'll be more than happy to attempt to provide it for you. Okay, thank you for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.